Hey, welcome to Coffee Tech Talk. I'm John Ferguson. How are you doing today, Marty?
John, I'm doing great.
We've got a special guest all the way from Kansas City.
All the way.
Yeah, all the way. Yeah, like I think next door to you. I don't know. Christopher
I
Oppenhuis,
could almost throw a rock to him.
right? Right.
Yeah.
I've known Christopher for a while. I don't know, a couple of years or a decade or so. I don't know. It's close to a decade. Oh, we'll figure that out later on in the show. But yeah, so this week we're just gonna chat with someone who has relatively recently kind of like established and started growing a coffee roasting company in Kansas City. And I thought it was kind of cool, like what he was doing, like kind of like a unique approach to all this stuff. But yeah, so it's Christopher, and he's in the waiting room right now. I don't know what we have for him today. Probably, maybe we have some plants in the background for him. And, there he is. Hi, Christopher. Welcome to the show. You'll be with us in just a minute, right? Okay, so
Oh,
this is Christopher at
he looks way too
Marcell,
comfortable back there.
right? Well, in this photo, he's at work, doing charts and stuff, accounting for things, accounting for roasts, accounting for money, accounting for organization. It's a lot of paperwork doing, like a roasting company, right?
You
Yeah.
would think that if you start a roasting company that you would just spend all your time roasting coffee and drinking coffee and tasting coffee and no, there's a whole lot more to it when you actually need to make a living,
Yeah. I mean,
run a business.
if you were
Coffee.
doing nothing but roasting coffee, first off, you'd be really successful because that's a lot of roasting. Unless you're using a 1 pound roaster, then you're doing about 10 pounds a day, which, that's a lot of people start out that way and then they kind of grow from there. Speaking of which, I went on a road trip today.
Awesome.
I went out to Funk, Nebraska. It's kind of cool. It's a town named after one of my favorite words, funk, right? And then also went to Holdridge, Nebraska, which is also a
Okay.
road or street in Lincoln. So I was like, wow, I'm going to the actual town of Holdridge, way out west. And then I went to Kearney, Nebraska, and I came across Calico.
Calico.
Look at that
Yeah.
Probat. Isn't that beautiful? Look at
That's
that. It's an L12.
Gorgeous machine there.
But why I brought this up, first off, it's an awesome facility. They've got a nice PB 3-group linea. I think they got like a little peak, Malconing, and a nice Probat. But I just didn't know places like this, were that prevalent in Western Nebraska. So the culture is really starting to grow in smaller communities, and it's really wonderful to see. And I'm really excited about getting to know these people and also what they're doing and the coffees that they're bringing in. It's really exciting. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's no
what do
longer.
you see out there?
Well,
Yeah.
we kind of see the same kind of growth pattern. You've got your moderate to large specialty coffee, which are still small compared to the big commercial guys. But those seem to be dwarfed a little bit by the aggregate, it's a big word for me, of a lot of these smaller roasters that are doing some awesome stuff. And what's really cool about these smaller roasters that are roasting on a much smaller batch size is they can turn on a dime. If there's a single bag of really exquisite coffee out there, that's in their wheelhouse. That works for them where it wouldn't work for a Starbucks or a larger corporation. That one bag wouldn't do them any good at all. But these
Yeah.
smaller roasters, they can get these little diamonds, these little jewels that are out there.
Yeah, it's really fun. And so a part of, me going out there was I was just kind of buying some equipment, espresso equipment at smaller, different locations and whatnot. And, the thought it kind of occurred to me, Marty, you do this a lot. You do a lot of traveling. You're fixing and picking up equipment, bringing it back in all types of weather and bringing all these types of tools. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what do you do? I mean, what kind of, like, first off, technicians and vehicles getting equipment, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about was what kind of vehicle would you choose? This is a terribly pixelated. Would you drive the Toyota Corolla, which is like one of the most popular vehicles on the planet, or would you take your pickup truck? And I love this.
Well, that's
this is
getting better.
Isn't that nice with a camper? Look at this was on Wikipedia. It says, I am the photographer and this is my truck in the photograph. This was taken in Longview, Texas on October 31st, 2006. That's awesome. I just love how he got to explain that was his truck. 2006. But I don't think that he was a technician or buying coffee equipment. Although
Probably
in
not.
Texas wouldn't be a problem because it's not, snowing all the time in Texas. And then you got this thing, which is a nice little little mini cargo van, right? Coffee to go. It's a new company I started. You like it? Coffee to go.
I like it. I like it.
So which one of these, this is the quiz, which one of these would you prefer hauling espresso equipment? At least 3 espresso machines. This one, this one, or this one?
Well, I mean,
Okay.
if this is my challenge, you've made it awfully easy for me tonight.
Okay. The one with
no,
coffee on it.
a van like that is
Yeah. I see. We are pausing the show for a second. We had a collapse at AM this morning and I got back at 5 o'clock today. And it was just like a lot of road time, And yeah.
Guys, thanks for holding with us. We had a little hiccup in the stream. It looks like we had a couple things crash on the back end, but John and Marty are back here now, so I'll let them take it away.
Yeah, you guys missed it. The audience missed out on a really good conversation.
Sure.
So I think where we left off was Marty picking the preferred vehicle for grabbing.
Right.
Well, obviously a van built for that would be the ideal thing. But that's not to say that, I mean, we got to start out somewhere.
Right.
There for several years, I used a Subaru Baja.
Yeah.
That got me rolling. So
well, I'll tell you, Marty, I did start with my Corolla, and then I have an old pickup truck, and I just got one of these. So I got a nice old used little Ford Transit, and I'll tell you, it's not bad.
You're heading in the right direction.
Well, we'll see. I mean, because you can also sleep in it, and you can also like live in it down by the river if you need to. So and there's no windows, so it's a nice camper shell too.
There may be a whole nother side of John we don't know.
Oh, there's a couple of them. Yeah. So I'm also curious, Marty, about what do you put in the van? As far as like, what's the things that you carry around? Best tools for repairs, installation, transporting equipment?
I don't think we're a lot different than a lot of shops. If you've got a finite customer list with a finite amount of different pieces of equipment you're going to work on, you're going to want to have as many of the known problem parts on your truck so that you don't have to restock every day and make that happen. Not everyone can do that because the list of equipment is pretty vast, and you'd have to have a van 3 times the size of that one that you showed to be able to do that. So most everyone, you have your common stuff that fits most of the equipment that you deal with and are on the hit list of most common failures or common maintenance, like gaskets and things like group gaskets.
I got a question for you then. What if catastrophic unforeseen event where an espresso machine, you're like, I got to take this back. I got to take it back to the workshop. That's sure. I was kind of curious. And also, like, if you're going to buy an espresso machine in weather like this, I remember you came up to Lincoln once and you had, and I went to Harbor Freight, took up some photographs here. You had, I think, the bottom left-hand corner, right?
Yeah, the bottom left-hand corner. And we have several of these from Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight is not the highest quality tools out there, but if you pick and choose what you get from them and know what you're getting, then you can get some pretty good deals on things. We use those hydraulic carts successfully. I do add a platform on them, bolt down a platform to make that platform a little bit bigger so a 3 or 4 group machine will fit on them easily. Outside of that, we just rock and roll with those. They're heavy, so if you're going to have a van like what you just got, you're going to want to have some sort of ramp. And there's a lot of sources out there for ramps for wheelchair accessibility and things like that. Especially for the transit vans, there's a ton of stuff designed specifically for those.
You have a transit van? Do you have a transit van?
Yeah, we do.
do you think that like, do you know a lot of people that do that are in the business? I mean, is
Yeah,
that
it's
like,
probably one of the more popular.
okay.
Um,
Because I think the
brand.
Mercedes were a little bit nicer, but also like twice the cost, right?
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, hey, I
Um,
think, I don't know if you have anything else to add. I mean, I like the red
I,
toolbox.
I do. I mean, you need your tools. I also recommend would never, ever, hardly ever run a call without my Leatherman.
Yes,
I use that all the time. Would not at all show up without a multimeter.
absolutely.
Have you ever showed up without a multimeter, John? Have you
Oh
ever
yeah,
showed up to?
twice. Yeah,
Um,
once I just completely forgot. The second time I was like, oh, like I swear I was going to bring it and it did not get into the bag. So yeah.
Now that's one of the tools you can't use a different tool for that.
Right.
You got to have that. Outside of that, I mean, it's the normal stuff.
But like, do you take all this stuff when you just out on a service call, or like, if you're you don't know if you're gonna have to pick up a machine, or are you thinking like, well, in this scenario, there's a possibility I might have to bring it back, so I better put this on the truck.
I don't normally travel with the cart. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Just depends on what's in it, what's in
Okay.
the van. It just depends on the scenario. There is another cart that's out there that's kind of cool if you don't want to have a ramp,
Yeah.
and it's called a DEM truck,
Okay.
DEMTUK, I believe.
Nice.
And
Okay.
they were built overseas originally, but there is a DEM truck USA if you want to look that up. It's a little bit different than the hydraulic situation, but it kind of allows you, like a gurney, to pull
Okay.
up to back of a van without a ramp, and the platform itself detaches and you roll it directly on
Oh,
into
it's
the
like a little
van.
roller coaster. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Marty, I
really
gotta
kind of
pop
cool.
in for a second and
Nice.
say Frank Freeman jumped in the chat about 5 minutes ago, calling out the DEM truck. So I think he beat you
Nice.
to the punch on that one.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
We've
No,
got
it's
some smart people watching. This is awesome.
yeah,
Hey,
they're out there. So we
yeah.
have both. There's times you wanted to
Okay.
have that hydraulic to be able to lift. Sometimes you don't need that movable lift, and the DEM truck works really well.
Well, I'm working my way up on this stuff.
Okay.
I've got one thing just to share with everybody. I went to the post office today and I saw this. On April 9th, they're going to be releasing these coffee stamps. I mean, I don't know about the cappuccino. I'm not sure if I would make it like that, or the mocha, but the latte is not bad. I like the latte. I'm going to get a couple sheets of this on April 9th, just saying 2 months away.
Sure.
Everybody go buy some stamps from the post office and keep them in
I'll
business.
chime in one more time here. And
Yeah.
whoever that barista is being taught to pour the latte art facing the handle of the cup
Oh,
needs a reteach right there.
oh, good call.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that
Dietrich,
was something
for
that
pointing that
little
out.
thing that we, a little thing that we
Wow.
found, that we came to find out. If we ever noticed that there was a left-handed, or like a left-handed individual as well that was a regular, we would always try to flip the cup around as well to pour the latte art in the correct way for them. So
Yeah.
you always
Why
want to
d-
sip into
That
the
is a
base
good
of
point.
those.
Hey,
those
that is a great observation. I just didn't catch that right away. And the steam coming off the espresso, that's impressive too. So anyway, I think we're ready to bring on Christopher. Let's bring in Christopher into the show. And I think, Marty, have you met
Yes.
Christopher?
I have met Christopher, and
Hi, Christopher. How's it going?
I absolutely enjoy any conversation I get to have with Christopher, because he's one of these guys that you can tell is a deep thinker, has a lot going on, and I love that. I love that about him.
Well, let's start with the basics. How's it going?
Hey,
How you
good.
doing?
Cool.
So, yeah, it's chilly out, and sorry about the Kansas City Chiefs, guys. I mean, kind of, hey, you can't win them all, almost, but
Hey, that was just one game out of a great season.
oh, no doubt. And I still think at the end of that game, I was thinking like, still one of the best quarterback. I mean, some of those things, some of the passes that he had were just acrobatic, amazing stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Kudos to the
Cannot
Chiefs.
argue that. You agree, Christopher?
He knows how to throw a ball.
that's right. Hey, and you know how to print some bags. What's this, Marcell? Is this a new coffee thing you're doing?
Yeah, those are some of our sample bags, and we get those printed up by some of our our cohorts over at Glad Hand Studio in Kansas City, a screen printing studio.
Nice.
And yeah, no, we just like to mix it up. We do private label with Marcell, and we get bags printed through them for some of our clients. And
Oh, we're going to talk about what private label is and what toll roasting is.
But
That's
yeah,
I love that you mentioned that.
but those bags are fun
yeah.
because they're literally 3 different screen print inks next to each other that then get, squeegeed across the the stencil or like the print to actually, print onto the bag. So every single one kind of has like a little bit of a different gradient. And it's kind of nice. Everyone's kind of unique. It just shows that little like hands-on piece to like, the fact that humans are behind this whole supply chain, whether it's like the coffee, the people that roasted it or the people that printed the bags. Yeah, there's a human touch there. So.
I love it. And here you are in front of the building that I've been to, I think once or twice, maybe 3 times. One time you're not there or not, it wasn't open because there's at that time there was, and I don't know, we'll talk about your hours here pretty soon. But it's a beautiful building. And I think I'll stop here because all the next, I don't have too many slides today and they're all good. So I better slow down.
Good.
I wanted to ask you, where did we meet? When was the first time we met?
When you judged the 2011 North Central Brewers Cup.
In
it was
Chicago.
the first year of the Brewers Cup. It was in Chicago at Navy Pier.
On the pier. I remember that.
And part of the requisite for the judging was that they needed Q graders, and then they couldn't find anybody in the region who was kind of, so I know you got called in kind of last minute there. You like drove out and then had to like drive home right after the competition ended. But no, I worked with Dogwood then, and I was able to place second in that competition.
You were Dogwood second.
When we first met.
Dogwood at that time. Okay, because before Dogwood, you were in this dark space or this, where is this at? Dark matter. Or
Dark matter,
can you explain? Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah. So that
is that like a chemical or a space or a place or what?
Space is the place.
Oh sure. Yeah, I do know that.
And so, going into dark matter, it all started with a coffee shop called the Star Lounge. And basically me and one of my best friends wanted to open up a coffee shop. We had that opportunity with some real estate investors who wanted to like turn this neighborhood on kind of the near / far west side of Chicago.
In Chicago, okay, yeah.
And yeah, we started it for them. The neighborhood didn't kind of turn as quick as I think they thought it was going to. And
okay, yeah.
They were ready to retreat. We had the opportunity after developing it to take it over from them. And from there we made a relationship with the Bridgeport Coffee Company. He was an air roaster. He had a 35-pound Civix roasting machine, and basically
I've roasted on one of those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Offered us the opportunity to like buy off his inventory, roast coffee for our shop. We'd go and do that, bring it back to our space, serve it up to our customers. And we were just like early in our kind of geeky phase. We were former Peatniks before that.
And this was 2011, right?
Before that, actually, we initially started the Star Lounge around 2006.
Okay.
When I was 19 years old, and Jay Diaz, who is the owner of Dark Matter now, one of the main owners / founders.
Right.
Him and I started that coffee shop, 50-50 back in 2007 when we took over like our ownership.
All right.
Alongside a couple more partners.
Yeah.
And roasting came later. And
so what brought you to that point in 2005-06 to I'm gonna open up a coffee roasting company, or I'm gonna open up a coffee shop or a cafe? What got you interested in coffee? Because I think today's theme is sort of like I want to cater to people who are just kind of really impassioned to get into this business. And Marty, I mean, you see it all the time when you're out there fixing espresso machines and getting to see like the newly built out spaces and hearing the stories. What brought you into coffee, Christopher?
Before coffee, I was a musician. I had the opportunity to do that professionally from a young age. Basically traveling, playing music from the age of like 16 on, and even like finishing high school on the internet to accomplish that. So when I was home from tour, I was able to kind of like get quick jobs at coffee shops and just as quickly leave them to kind of like, go back on the road, in Illinois, where I like kind of, spent my high school years. And ultimately my first job was at the Starbucks inside of the Barnes and Noble that, I hung out at when I was 16. So yeah, from 16 to 19, it was just some, odd jobs, helping people even at like 18 years old, just, start small town coffee shops in rural Illinois. before then moving back to Chicago at like, 19 after the band broke up, meeting Jay. We really first cut our teeth at like Pete's Coffee and Tea at North and Sheffield in Chicago.
Nice. Okay.
Back when Pete's Coffee was like independently owned, more exclusive, and like a really well-known West Coast institution. So people that were like traveling through Chicago like had a very high regard for it. And it was kind of a special thing that we did. Their training was really top-notch at the time, the education, the roasting, and then the actual selling of the coffee. So corporate kind of, coffee service is where I really cut my teeth before then.
Nice. I think we got a question up here, Dietrich. What do you got?
Before we get too far into it, Chris, what was the band? What kind of music were you guys playing?
And percussionist, right? You were playing, percussionist, right? Playing the drums?
Yeah. I was a drummer in
I
a
thought I remembered
hardcore band, a very yelly, loud, aggressive, but great band for us at the time called Atirieva.
Did you wear earplugs?
Sometimes when I like remembered to or didn't lose them
because my daughter, she plays the flute, and I'm like, hey, you just start now so you can save your hearing later, because I'm like deaf in my left.
Yeah.
So just curious how your hearing's doing.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
It's fine. It's probably
you can hear me okay, right?
It's better in
Am
the
I
right
yelling?
ear.
I can't.
So yeah, no, and the way you spell that, because you can still find it on Spotify, and even like an older recording got re-released last year, kind of like early on in the pandemic. It is Ateriavia.
Do you get royalties for every download still? Because I could go in there and just push the button a ton of times if you want me to.
You could.
I'll get you $1 or something.
You could, and I know Wolfpack did that with their Silent album and kind of gamed the system a little bit, but.
Nice.
But no,
just like a GameStop, right, or something, just kind of like that, but not quite.
I don't need to subject you to that sort of madness. No.
Well, you went. So you started in music. You got into well, you were in Chicago, but before you were in Chicago, you got some family roots in KC or not? I forgot. Maybe not.
Just
I don't know. Where you?
The wife's side. My wife's side. Her family is all from here. She's from here. We met in Chicago. So
I see. Okay, great. But then you went to Dogwood, which is in Minneapolis, which where I happened to work also, but not at the same time. You were there like right before I got there, and it was a great place to be. Brewers Cup did well for everybody.
Yeah,
so
we were there for the beginning. I got to make the jump from an air roaster, a Civets machine, to a nicely refurbished like UG22 Probot. So,
yeah, it's like the Troy version though, like 1984 Troy version. It's like very boxy.
Big, yes,
beautiful.
Totally. Still sought after. I mean, incredible. Like, super finely dialed and refurbished and installed by a guy named Marty Curtis, who really takes care of business. And yeah, we were buying incredible coffees. It's where I got to like really learn. I don't know. It was like 2010, 2011. So it was like, the specialty service thing was kind of new, and it was fun to just kind of be like a part of that. Early on, again, already knowing like the quick service side, but then kind of like learning the qualitative side of coffee as well.
And then after that, you went back to Chicago, I think, and it was for like this DeLorean place.
Yeah, a really well-known coffee shop there in the middle of Wicker Park, and there's like 200 coffee shops there in Wicker Park now. But again, 9-10 years ago, there was like only about a half a dozen, and one, the Wormhole, was a multi-roaster. They were one of the first to do that. They had really strong, just kind of like ethics in their buying. They had really strong service, and like, we're just like a really great time and like the really right place.
Hey, Marty,
vibe.
Have you been to Wormhole, Marty?
I'm not.
Have you seen photographs?
Yes,
they've got the Back to the Future theme. They've got I think you made lattes that had breakfast cereal, like what is it, the rainbow.
The Mocha Puffs was an early one, full of Cocoa Puffs with a shot of espresso in there, they really it was great to kind of set the tone of not taking yourself too seriously,
right.
But again, with the ethics, the quality kind of like in mind, and no, it was a lot of fun. Chicago's got a little bit more, I don't know, of an energy than Minneapolis. As much as we loved it there, we were just a little bit too young, I think, for that quality of life. We just weren't ready for it. So now it's the same reason why we're in Kansas City now.
Exactly. So I got a photo up here of it looks like the bones or the skeleton of a build out, and I see a 3-part sink. So like you're kind of how's is this a sign of where Kansas City's going? It's kind of growing in a sense. Like you're
Um,
building out. Is this your spot?
this is my spot. So, I mean,
Nice.
I think Kansas City is growing all the time in a bunch of different ways. But yeah, but for a locally owned Kansas City based business, this is, you know, a 4,000 square foot space that we were able to do this kind of 1,000 square foot build out within. And it's a multi-use building. This is a little bit more like a recent, like finished, interior of it. But ultimately, yeah, the
Oh, I see. Check it out. There's the sink at the bottom, the hand washing sink.
yep. And there's that
And there it is now on the wall.
Totally. Yep.
I love it.
There you go.
I get the visual, so it's kind of like from the other side. We're kind of coming in here. And that Dietrich, I've seen that before. That's an IR7, right? From where did you get that one?
That came out of Lincoln, Nebraska.
That's right.
John's,
That's right.
John's locale.
And you came by and said hi one day. That was awesome. Like you dropped by the house and chatted. Yeah.
That was special because that was more recent, and that was a pandemic trip, so it was a driving trip. It was like a porch outdoor, kind of like extra safe kind of trip, but it was great to see that roaster, originally with my wife, go and like rent an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere, get to spend some time in Lincoln. Literally just taking a look at that, drinking a little bit of coffee, and then saying what's up to you before trucking back to Kansas City.
Hey Marty, did you get your eyes on this roaster when
I've been inside that roaster. Yes, I have.
Now I gotta say, like I followed your Instagram through your progress of cleaning this roaster up, and it was impressive, the detail that you got down to. I mean, people like, that have that kind of passion, they just won't give up until it's perfect. And I was like, this is beautiful. I mean, wasn't it like a great experience to just take something completely apart, polish it up and put it back together? And now I'm going to be calling you, because I remember one time, a long time ago, you're like, hey, you're working on a different Dietrich or whatever. And we kind of met up a long time ago. And now I think that I would come to you and be like, hey, how do you take off that motor on the back to make the swirly things go in the cooling tray,
Yeah.
No, and Marty, you probably know about that too, but yeah. So I'm just excited to talk about this, Marty. What do you think? Of this roaster? Did Christopher do a good job?
He did a great job. And I love working on roasters that people care about, like Christopher does, because I don't leave there filthy dirty. It's clean. It's nice to work on. I don't have to dig stuff out to get to a nut or bolt. It's nice. But just looking at this picture, this is the quintessential. If you were to just have a snapshot of a roaster, coffee roaster, this design represents that, and I'm kind of fond of that aesthetically.
Aesthetics, I like it. Dietrich, you got another one. What you got?
Yeah, Chris, I mean, was that your first time kind of taking apart a roaster like that, or I mean, did you get to practice on other roasters before?
Well, so for the project John was mentioning with
that's right.
With, the wormhole, the roasting arm is called Halfwit, and there was also a coffee shop called Gaslight.
That's right.
So we were kind of sharing. I was in the middle of two companies sharing one space, doing separate buying, separate quality control between like two different teams. But with a IR12 Diedrich from probably like the late 90s, that was in really rough shape. So John was working at Dogwood at the time. I actually called him and like flew him out to Chicago to help me rebuild that, or kind of like give me some pointers on like the rebuild.
I just pointed. I didn't do much else, but
yeah,
it was fun just kind of working through it. Right.
I'd never, at that time I hadn't roasted on Diedrichs before, but
and I used to own IR12, so it's just kind of the same deal. Yeah, gotcha.
Ultimately the bigger picture in either case is like being able to go into a piece of equipment and learn it, from the inside out before actually like, using it it's just the best way to figure out like how, things connect, how A goes to B, how you can actually like dial in or like fine tune it. And even like, before I had this Diedrich, I didn't like source a new Mill City roaster, and previously, before that's it actually being sold.
Okay, yeah,
that was fun, and it just went right up the road, so it's not like it like went across country like uncovered.
And here's another roaster you were on, but this one's a little bit smaller.
Totally. That was like right on the patio in Carmo in Mantiqueira de Minas, Brazil. So But no, long story short,
We'll get back to that.
just even previously working on roasters, helping people like kind of set up, their roasting companies, or, some would call it consulting. I just like to refer to it as like troubleshooting, or just like John said, sometimes you just kind of like point and like go yes or no. You don't do a whole lot other than kind of like give somebody the confidence for them to be able to like move through their own project or learn their equipment, right? So
That's right.
being able to take something apart and put it back together is one of the best ways to actually like learn about that piece of equipment. And for myself, I'm more of a visual learner. I could read about it, but like doing it will give me so much more, I don't know, like satisfaction, and just like even the investment in that equipment.
So was that the first roaster that you have gone through the deconstruction, reconstruction process with?
This deep, probably, just because it was as kind of like messy as it was when I first acquired it. But other than that, no. I mean, similarly, I'd been through a different reconstruction project with another older Diedrich roaster.
Yeah.
So,
gotcha. Well, I have an interesting segue here. It's sort of like, you've worked at a lot of roasting companies, and you've roasted on a lot of roasters, and then you've taken them apart after you have roasted on them. So kind of doing the same thing here with, a roasting company. Like, I was a barista, and then I opened up a roasting company, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Like you don't learn, sometimes you get an MBA and then you figure out how to like, open up a business. But a lot of people, start off with a passion of coffee, and they just end up, running a business. They're like, oh, what am I doing? What's my value proposition? What's my niche? How am I going to make money? Am I going to be roasting, solely roasting? Marty, I think you mentioned this. Am I just going to be roasting all the time, or do I have to like, play with some numbers and figure out how to pay the bills, and what makes sense? And I think that like, I don't know if we want to kind of jump into that. I mean, I got a couple other things about QC and stuff, but why not, right? Well, actually, let's hold that off. Let's talk about. I got one question. Okay, I have a question from the audience. I'm making this up, but it was actually a question today. Distribution tool. All right. How do you guys feel about this? I know this is kind of like out of left field. I just wanted to get it out of the way before we move on to the business aspect of things. So my finger's getting really dry because it's like the winter time. And I was talking with someone today about, the distribution of your espresso in the portafilter in the basket. And I suggested that maybe they use a distribution tool. What do you think, Marty?
Well, let me rephrase that a little bit and throw it right at Christopher.
Okay.
Undoubtedly, Christopher, you have clients, you have customers, you've got people other than you that drink your coffee, that you sell your coffee to. So they undoubtedly ask you for tips and tricks and skill information on how to be a better barista and things like that. So in the vein of distribution tools, tamping process, stuff like that, where's your philosophy on that?
I mean, being, starting as a barista myself, being a barista and a roaster side by side for many years, I just look at my finger now and it's completely like annihilated from grooming coffee. Coarse coffee over a basket, fine coffee, over the metal, washing your hands, like, my hands are annihilated from, the job itself that especially then really didn't pay enough. So yeah, I think like anything else, you introduce it intentionally. And I think you kind of like be able to gauge what the right kind of tool is, and again, like everything else, try and create solutions that are like more long-term, not just like hopping around trends, and things that work for your cafe. Just because it like works in someone's blog doesn't mean it actually works for your service flow.
Yeah, and I like how you talked about it like as a tool, and you said a tool, not a trend. So it's a tool, not a toy. I know it's an extra gadget, but it's something that if you can actually indoctrinate into your program and use it properly, I think that there is a benefit to it. But I think it's just a matter of giving it a shot. I think they're like $25, something like that on Amazon.
Yeah.
You can
Now, John, are you talking about these sort of things?
Yeah, because that one you can adjust the depth. So like if you have like a lighter roast or a darker roast that has more volume, you can adjust the depth of that distribution so it doesn't crush or smash the espresso.
Let me pipe in here from the mechanic side of it, which I've been in it from way back when we were tamp, hit it, tamp, hit it again, you know, all the cracking, and don't crack anymore. Don't do that. Just take that
Okay.
out of your vocabulary.
No more cracking up.
And in that early process, you talked about giving them the finger.
Right. Yeah, give them the finger.
Is that thumb finger action. And the purpose of that way back then was basically to evenly distribute the coffee, so that when you do tamp, there's no thick spots that's been compressed more, so that you have as even of I don't know, saturation, and as even
Right. No channeling,
flow.
things
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
No loose areas, things
Because
like
like
that.
water takes the
So-
path of least resistance and all that.
So
Yeah.
so my deal on these tools
Excellent.
is
Yep.
even with that, unless you start off with a pretty evenly distributed pile of coffee anyway, you're not going to move it around that much. We've played with those.
Right.
So you have to, they do a pretty good job of kind of patting it down and
Right.
prepping it for your tamp, but they don't really distribute. So I think the word distribute is probably too loosely used for most of those.
And so you've
Um,
got an actual thing here. Can you show us what you've got?
Coffee with a Z on the end of it. They sell, and it just somewhat recently, you can get it in the US. And I don't know who's distributing it, but it's Duomo. And I've seen some of these handmade, and people, baristas, they will say, oh, well, I've been doing that for a long time. What this is a, basically it's a dome that goes over your portafilter.
All
But
right.
here's the trickster.
You've got little pins in there, and
got-
they're twisting, right? So
Exactly.
you're kind of like you know, raking a deep raking the coffee to kind of get the
Exactly.
clumps,
So
to like declump it, maybe. Perhaps?
it declumps and it distributes. And there's videos
Nice.
out there, and we've done it, where we put
Right.
coffee in it and then put salt over on one side.
Oh,
Put this
nice.
down,
Okay.
spin it, you lift it back up, and you can't even find the salt. It's so evenly distributed. So
Nice.
that actually is a distributor. You can make your
Excellent.
own. You can use you know,
A pencil?
little needles, pencils. I've seen corks with needles in them.
Yeah, or
A
maybe
lot
not a
of
pencil.
stuff.
Don't use a
this
pencil.
actually works
Better.
pretty good.
Yeah.
They're kind of expensive. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, hey, Dietrich's got a question too.
Yeah, well, we've
so
got a
what do you
couple
got?
questions in the comments
Okay.
here. We got Holly Bastion popping in.
Hey, Holly.
Saying Pullman or the flathead style seems to be closer to the finger distribution, and the finger knows what it's doing at least. And then I don't know if
Sure.
you guys want to comment on that at all. And then,
Well, Holly knows.
okay. Otherwise, then we'll
I
jump over
trust
to
Holly.
Ryan as well. Gentlemen, any comment on the Socratic Coffee's findings that coffee distro tools such as the OCD have a negative effect on yield?
I don't know. That's
Well,
a great question. I'd have to look into that.
I'm gonna have to pipe in on that it really depends on that variable of how well were you distributed before you use that distribution tool, because that's the key right there. If you're totally off to one side, there's not a distribution tool out there other than one that's physically going to stir it up that's going
Right.
to correct that. And
That's
so
true.
I don't know that it would be negative definitely on the distribution tool as much as the prep prior to using that.
Mm.
And then Holly also comments that the twister from China is an interesting tool as well.
All right.
That actually is a
Twister
pretty
from
cool little
China.
tool. That is an auger
Nice.
that augers down, and it really looks like a propeller for
Hey,
a
Marty.
boat. Yeah.
I just had a really good idea. We should have Holly on the show to talk about distribution and espresso.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's been way too long. Holly,
Christopher,
can
what are you?
we have
What
you
are
on the
you?
show?
Are you using anything specific at your shop?
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
I don't have a shop, but I would say the idea, of Marty's right, like of distributing espresso versus actually like grooming it with
Right.
like fine, teeth, like a comb or like the wire bristles that are on that. I think, the idea of declumping and kind of having like fluffier espresso that's more evenly distributed to like work with, seems to make more sense. I personally don't know much about Socratic's findings, but I do trust that, since that's like an area that they particularly believe in, what they suggest is probably relative. And, ultimately we know espresso grinders like aren't perfect. So I think as long as we kind of keep striving toward, systems that actually like work in cafe flow to distribute and like make more consistent espresso, that's, the ultimate goal. There's already so many issues built in with just the idea of what we're doing it in the first place that the fact that it can even be as great as it is already is pretty impressive. So
I'll follow along with something you said as well. I mean, consistency is so key in a coffee shop as well, where you're getting out drinks. Another interesting thing is, you can have a specialty coffee shop that's having, X number of people coming in, a small amount of people coming in and per hour versus high volume shops as well. And I think that's something that's important to take in as well, with what tools you're using to prep your espresso and how long those shots are taking, depending upon what tools you're using. So,
Absolutely.
Well, hey, so I wanted to talk to you, Christopher, about your business model. You've worked at several different roasting companies in the past, and you've served plenty enough espresso and brewed coffee and roasted plenty enough. What are you, and here's a great, value that you bring to the table is that you have a good palate. You know a lot about coffee. We'll just get that out of the way, right? I mean, like a lot of people are Q graders. A lot of people, are sourcing great coffees. But what are you doing differently that makes you stand out as a business, and what got you into what you're doing? Can you explain to me what's different about Marcell Coffee versus the one that I started, which is a small roaster selling coffee?
Sure. And I mean, there's a couple of main, I guess points that allowed me the confidence to be able to even like start, a business in a sea of a lot of roasting companies, a lot of great coffee. And, people have been doing this for a long time, like quality is a given, right? But for people who are kind of like just entering the field, like that's like still the goal, and the exciting part is like tasting those God shots, tasting those varietals that like, no one's tasted before. And,
Right.
Kind of ultimately realizing like, who are we, really serving, and ultimately doing a roasting company. And that's a little bit more like service based, and kind of also kind of looking at like what I thought was lacking in the wholesale, like specialty roasting realm, which is hospitality to the actual like kind of like clients that are then serving to the end users. So, what we do isn't anything that doesn't exist already,
Right.
but more so is on the commodity side of coffee with, private labeled grocery store offering.
What does that mean? I mean, for the audience out there, I wanted to talk about this because a lot of people might not understand exactly the difference between what a private label is versus a toll roaster versus a micro roaster, in-house production. You have wholesale accounts that someone calls you up and says, hey, I've got a cafe. I like your coffee. I would like to buy some. They are now your wholesale account, but you have your name on it. It's like, Marcell or whatever. I don't know. Just like brand name, you got a wholesale account. But then you've got other people out there that want to express their own brand. Maybe it's not, and that's where private labeling comes in. Toll roasting is a little different. So what does private labeling mean to you?
I say it's simply almost like, the Trader Joe's model, and even they are a coffee retailer. They have their own in-house brand of coffee.
Okay.
But Trader Joe's, the company, isn't necessarily like a coffee sourcer or roaster. They are a curator of like, brand-driven products that match their identity, that match their demographic, which then they get to employ in different parts of the world.
So are they contracting out basically established roasters to roast coffee for them?
Established in the sense of like business, they might be doing like 1 million pounds a year of green coffee, but you might have never heard of them in like the specialty spectrum. They might not be talked about on Sprudge. You might not like read about them in Barista Magazine, So that's the reality of like coffee. And again, for those of us that have kind of been like around it for a minute, we realize that in order for this business to be as big as it actually is, billion cups consumed a day or like whatever it is, there's a lot of different types of companies that are in really large capacities, well beyond say like what we even see in like the specialty spectrum, that, run that like 90+% of like coffee consumption.
And and for higher end specialty coffee roasters too out there that they do bring on clients and do contract with businesses to kind of it's probably rated by the pound, or like if someone says, hey, we want you to roast our coffee for us because we have a project going on, they're like, okay, well, it's X amount per pound of whatever, and it's additional income that a company can make. I think I don't know if I can't remember. I know that I was approached, when I had a company, some people wanted to have me to do some branding underneath their label, but I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. It's just not really set up for that. But you're doing that, right? That's kind of like one of the special things that you're doing.
Well, and honestly, that is primarily what we do. We
Okay.
really don't sell wholesale as Marcell. And we really don't like sell Marcell as an identity of a brand. We did sell retail online.
Because this bag says Marcell on it. I was just wondering, like.
Totally. And again, these are like just what we use as some of our sample bags.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
at one point, we were able to sell them online to like retail customers at home, but it was just as a result of like the onset of the pandemic, our business being like 6 months old, taking on some like extra income and being able to like, again, supply coffee to like some of our friends and family and our clients who are now quarantined at home, instead of like, getting coffee through the typical channels of like our wholesale clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are at this point only a B2B wholesaler, and we are only a private / like white label, basically coffee roasting service. All of our work is on the supply side, the relationships with the producers, the exporters, the importers, the supply chain, the quality control, to then be able to turn around and allow our clients to brand that, select that, kind of like have us roast it as light or as dark as they would like, to their preference, their like demographic, their identity, in a way that's going to like suit them, I think, a little bit more, in a custom way than say just trying to like retrofit someone else's brand, who then also like, why wouldn't you focus more on your retail entity than your like wholesale clients, right?
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious about the difference between the private labeling, which you've explained, where you are basically like in most of the control of the product of the, like you supply the bag, the green coffee, the roasting, the printing of the bag, and and with the toll roaster scenario, at times they would be like, well, we want you to use this coffee and have this profile. And we're going to buy the bag, but we're going to give you the bag so you don't have to like put that on your expense sheet. So it's kind of a more control with the customer has, whereas private labeling, it's more, you have more control as your company, and you're putting a brand name on the bag, but everything on inside, you're paying for the bag, you're paying for the coffee, and they're going to pay you for that product. So there's a different budget involved there too, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Do you do any of that toll roasting where anybody has like a specific thing in mind, like we want Sumatra, we want it light roast? Can you do that?
That idea of like being able to source that kind of a coffee, like it already exists in our profile. So like that's, almost like a layup to be able to hit that spec. Say if a client had a relationship with like a specific, coffee producer, which tends to happen sometimes, whether it's just like, a pre-existing relationship, or somebody who like walks into your coffee shop and like has family members who like farm coffee. Sometimes the logistic of actually like moving it here might be a problem. That's where kind of our relationship with our importer might come into play, where they can potentially like fit that bill, figure out if there's like a good, mutually beneficial like situation to be able to potentially source that coffee. And either if we move it or if they move it, if there's a way that it like makes sense for them to get it here, we are subject to the international trade logistic of coffee. So if the client can only like buy a bag of coffee, it's not going to like make sense to like try and put that in a container. But again, we call those case by case bases. Ultimately, like we can do different services because at the core of what we do is like, sourcing, roasting, and quality control to a spec. We don't actually do production of people's like say retail bags, because honestly, I found like selling people wholesale 12-ounce bags of coffee that just get old on their retail shelf it's just kind of a miss when we're trying to like promote coffees that should be consumed within like, 2 to 4 weeks off.
And we talked about this last week, and I thought that was a really good point that you brought up, like where you were saying like now you are selling coffee in larger quantities, right?
It's just bulk. Yeah, we basically,
And so that's as far
we
as
don't
the
even sell bags of
fulfillment
coffee.
goes,
We
right?
sell
So
buckets of coffee.
and that's pretty
uh,
cool. In buckets instead of bags.
It's just less waste, I mean, if you get like a weekly cafe customer who's doing 100 pounds of coffee, that's like 25-pound bags. Most of the times it's like end up in the trash. At most you can like recycle or compost them, but
Right.
if you don't have to like include them in the mix at all, honestly, is that like price
That's really
point?
efficient. It kind of reminds me of like IKEA, where it's like, it's all in the box, but you have to assemble it yourself. So like you're roasting the coffee, but you're like, you're going to go ahead and fulfill it yourself. Here's the larger quantity of roasted coffee. You have bags and you know what you want to do. And so that's kind of, you kind of stop and allow them to do the fulfillment. And that might be more efficient, right? And price.
It's just because we kind of have the creative relationships and experience with manufacturers, we can recommend it.
Right.
But even that, if they get to like a certain volume, we just kind of like have them access that directly. It's just, for instance, with our printer, we like trade them coffee for setup fees. It allows us to do like really low minimums on craft paper bags to give a customer like at least 50 bags with like their brand, of coffee on it to kind of like prove the concept before, say, diving in, buying a case of like 500 or 1,000, hitting a different price point at that minimum scale. It's just like, connecting dots and basically like, being able to help people kind of like find these solutions. It just kind of helps with the relationship, and where instead of just being a supplier, we're just kind of like also helping to be a resource, for our clients to help them like have success with the product.
Right.
Most of my career has been kind of like, again, not just roasting, but also like serving the coffees that I've gotten to roast. Seeing it through to like the end consumers, kind of egotistical, like exciting piece, but it's also like just part of being able to actually kind of like relate that story. So the more relatability, the more ownership that we can give people of the coffee that like they're serving in their business, it's just more of a win for us in the relationship to them and the relationship to the end consumer.
Yeah.
And then being able to actually have that consumer support that brand through the utilitarian product of a retail bag of coffee. Now you have an additional like product. Now you can like, incentivize that by like a free cup or like cup, espresso shot, no different than like your local roaster. And we see a lot of small cafes and businesses get into roasting. And we see a lot of like poorly roasted coffee as a result of that, because it takes time to develop that skill set, so that might be a path that actually even makes sense for some of my clients now. But in the meantime, we're just kind of bridging that gap and at least allowing them to serve products that they've selected, can put their name on and show that ownership of to their consumers that they're serving every day.
Dietrich has a question. What do you got, Dietrich?
Yeah, we're going to jump over to the comments. Holly did want to have some thoughts, kind of for everybody to chime in, but Christopher, she wanted to talk a little bit about blending. She sees it as another kind of trend coming through specialty. What do you guys think about blending coffees?
I laugh a little bit. Go ahead, Christopher.
I mean, if you want to, I've been talking for a little bit. If you want to say something.
Well,
Marty.
The only reason that I chuckle is because it's what's once was new is old again, or what's new, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
it never really left.
Way back,
they've always been
there. They've always been there, and they've always been prevalent. Yes, single origin came on strong, and I absolutely love single origins, not only in drip but espresso.
I think,
but when I first got into coffee, 90% plus of everything we drank was blended. It was a blend, and part of that was so that they could be fairly consistent throughout the year, where single origins are hit and miss through the year. There's seasons on those, where if you blend it and you can modify your blends to carry them out throughout the year, you can have a consistent product as a blend longer.
And I think that like a blend, it's really how you approach that concept. I mean, if you are getting down to, and I don't want to nitpick this, but like if you get down to one single farm, they're blending all day, every day, different day lots, different types of, unique coffee processing. Maybe they're blending like a some sort of honey process level with a different processing level, like maybe black honey with red honey, and they're making a purple honey or something like that. I don't know. But like, there's a lot of blending going on, even single farms or even within a certain country. I think blending, it's how do you want to define what that question is? Like, at what level are you talking? Like like an Indonesian with a Brazil and an Ethiopian, or 3 different Ethiopians together? I remember the first time Madcap, I believe, was the first one who really dawned on me that they put a natural process with a washed Yirgacheffe, and they put it together, and this is like, this was the summer or something blend, or summer solstice. Is that right? Anybody know that? I don't know.
Or to even make it easier,
Yeah.
Chris, do you have any favorite blends?
I mean, I like a lot of Brazils as bases for blends, and espressos especially. That's partially relationally, my personal relationship to Brazil and how much coffee I buy from there. But also really what they do in terms of like what a general consumer wants, or like what might be that bridge between like a commodity consumer and a specialty consumer, is gonna be something that's obviously good, and like a low acid, clean, chocolatey, smooth Brazil, similarly like might be the bridge to then that like fruity Ethiopian, right? That might be like eye-opening, but sometimes like that, gap can turn people off. So yeah, I do a lot of blends, and diving further, like I do a lot of pre-roast blending, which ultimately like another like blend I would mention is like that, coffee isn't all qualitative, like especially owning a business, it's a blend of like art and business, right? If we call like the coffee side art, but actually being able to like keep our lights on by selling it to the people that like want to support our brands, that's the business. Doing it well and consistent is like the business. It's the stuff you have to get excited about, as well as just like, say like what origin or like what kind of like
Right.
blend
Well,
the coffee came
so
from.
Christopher, how do you reach out to your audience? And like, because I know that like, your hours, one time I stopped by, you weren't there, and you don't have a coffee shop in the traditional sense, but sometimes you do pop-up events. But
Yeah.
how do you get customers? Is it social media driven? Is it word of mouth? Or is it an active campaign that you've kind of invested in? Like, I'm going to get out there and knock on doors and talk to restaurant owners. What's your method? What's your strategy?
Because it's gotten to like be all those different things in different companies now in different places. I'm in a really lucky place, especially like I don't have public hours because we're not really like a public facing business. The best way to support Marcell is by supporting the people that are like in our wholesale, like, roasting club is like
Right.
what we call that, program. So it's interesting, word of mouth, and like developing those relationships, and ultimately like trying to approach it initially with a heavy-handed sales approach, with sales tactics, with more of that door knocking, more of that like phone calling, emailing. It's just right time, right place.
Yeah.
The right like just little spark that can create that relationship is really what it comes down to.
And word of mouth is really powerful too. I mean, Kansas City is a tight knit community, and what you're doing is kind of unique, and it's kind of fun, and it's also not very. It doesn't feel competitive in a sense. Like it feels more, like a cooperative in a sense. So like you're cooperating with other people to to come together to get this product out for them.
Definitely.
And it's not necessarily like you are in a warehouse too, but do you have visitors? How do we get in touch with you? I guess this is actually at the end of the hour, and this is usually one of the outro questions that I'll have. So like, how does one do business with Marcell?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to learn more about us, obviously we have ways of getting in touch. Contacting Marcell Coffee is the easiest. Marcellcoffee.com is our website. Even we could riff on that for an hour, right? The value of websites in the modern day of like social media. We did a little bit of like that retail piece and like sold bags of coffee in small format online for a bit. So that took a little bit more like social media upkeep and actually like engagement. So that kind of helped like with some visibility. But I, would say just as organically doing some of the, outreach with Barista KC in Kansas City last summer, doing like a Barista Mercantile
Right.
You know, just like organic, like I have a space to share, there are resources here. If people want to like actually engage those and be able to like do something with them, like I'm open and let's share this house, you know? So even situations like that that aren't, certainly they could be like looked at as like being marketable, but like they
Right.
actually create more of an organic like interest. You
Mhm.
know, it's going to be a little bit more upfront to get people on their whole program of custom roasted coffee if they've never done it before, their own bags, if they're not a
Right.
creative company. But that's the thing, is like similar like sales tactics. You know, I have a very low percentage of customers that like I have a good relationships and longevity with 90 like 8% of them, you know, so
Right.
far in like a year and a half business. So it just comes down to that, like if it takes me a little bit longer, or it comes down to the right time with like that relationship to a client and becoming their provider,
Yeah.
more times than not, like we're not just going to be dropped because we didn't like just as quickly pick them up
Right.
or take an account or steal them. And it's like there are old ways of doing it, selling equipment, and honestly, like we don't mess with that.
And
You know,
that's a tough battle to win too. But I have one last
that's a
question
joke.
for you
It's a
before I
joke
hand it
to
over to
me. You know what I
Marty.
mean?
Yeah, I got one last question, and I'm always curious what people would think about this because I had my own answer when I had you know gone through owning a roasting company. How big do you want to get? What's your ideal? Do you want to take over the planet? Do you want to become like do you want to get jabbed, or like, I mean, what's your goal and where do
Yeah.
you want to be as far as size goes?
Honestly, you know, Marcell is one piece of like a house of businesses, you know, and it's the back end, it's the core, it's the foundation to hopefully then be able to like, you know, empower some retail businesses, some forward facing businesses, you know, whether it's like being able to help other people with their own retail models, you know, or be able to like launch some like other concepts. You know, ultimately, I think diversification is what it comes down to. You
Mhm.
know, Marcel has a very like scalable model in the sense of like it comes down to the equipment and the space that I'm in. There's a pretty solid growth pattern. I don't have to like break the mold because it's already been done before. It's just
Mhm.
again the longevity of those clients, kind of finding new ways to like keep them engaged.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it's so interesting because being a roaster for like 10 plus years now, coming from the place where like being a large roasting company, you know, was like doing £1 million a year. The small guys were still doing like 100,000 pounds of coffee a year at least, whether it was like your 2005 like intelligentsias, PTs, stump towns. They were like, you know, special, but they were large. And these days, because there's so many different roasting companies, you know, even a 50,000 pound a year green roaster is looked at as like a large asset to green coffee importers because like honestly, at least they're being able to like buy a half a container, you know, a quarter container of like an origin a year versus just
Yeah.
like at the same time though, I think disrupting and being able to actually there's more than one way to start a roasting business. So
Yes.
if there's a sea of like single person businesses and these are like that's how boutique coffee gets,
Yes.
honestly it's no different than the way it was like 100 years ago and like why you see
Yeah.
so many like vintage coffee cans at like antique stores. There
Yeah.
were thousands of roasting firms and there's no need, especially in like the current state of like multi-level conglomerization of coffee, the fact that like our specialty darlings that I mentioned like 15 years ago are now all owned by like the same company that like also owns our fast food companies. Like, you know, people don't realize how big coffee is and who actually already is in control of everything from the green export to like the retail side.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I think the biggest disruption of that is not selling a majority of your, you know, large company or feeling like you need to like do multi-million-dollar build outs in order to have a captive audience. I think being authentic
Yeah.
is the best way to engage. And if it just means that you're going to roast 5,000 pounds a year, that could be one person's salary that they might be able to retire on. And you're not going to be able to put that investment into like, honestly, anyone you're going to ever work for, myself included. You know what I mean? I can't
But
guarantee that I can give you like a 30-year job, but I have a better chance of doing it for myself now. And just like, so that empowerment,
yeah,
I think, is also like the other piece that's like really exciting, like, right? Like, you know,
absolutely.
but it all comes down to doing business. You have to be able to
Yeah.
compete with like the medium guys or the large guys and not like front level, but it's just like so that your business can actually have good health
Yeah. And I
or be
think
able
like,
to take advantage of like small business initiatives the same way the large guys do, you
yeah.
know?
Hey, Marty,
So
we are we were about done with our hour, and we're gonna do the personal stuff again. We're gonna start with it. We're gonna end with it. So Marty, take it away, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll get something to eat.
Two real quick questions, and I'll do one before the other so that we don't end up on a down note.
Oh yeah.
Start off with this one, and I'm going to kind of reword it a little bit.
You can say like, what's the worst?
Well, doing what you're doing, and having a coffee career at hand, there's challenges. What's been your biggest challenge? What's been your and maybe even a surprise challenge? Anything stand out for you?
I think it's just that confidence in business, and like being able to like walk into your bank and feel like you belong there, or being able to like actually talk to a lawyer and feel like you're worthy of their time, or actually engage like an accountant and like know that like, you're not as small as you think you are sometimes. You know what I mean?
Okay. Sure.
Because ultimately, like the same way that like I used to play shows for like whether it was like 5 people or like 500 people, we'd have to put on a show. It would have to be good. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
for me early on, that just kind of set the tone of like, everything's important as long as you approach it kind of like with professionalism and intentionality, and you're never wasting someone's time. You know what I mean? Like, because like as long as you're approaching, I think like with that intentionality and like respect for their time as well. So, some people might call that like fake it to make it. I think it's just like being able to like know that like, even though, my end goal might be like totally different than like wanting to become like a gazillionaire doing coffee, or like have coffee like shops all over the world, it's just as relevant because it comes down to like the heart and soul of that business. And as long as I guess like, my goal is like being able to retain that soul, or be able to like actually retain like the whys of, the fulfillment, why this is important, not just to myself, but like other people, the supply chain, or the people that are like actually.
No, I get it. I totally get it. And it's not necessarily a fake it to make it. It's a building of confidence in you. And
Absolutely.
I see that, and I get that. Second question is, along the way, what's been your most gratifying or most exciting story that you could share with us?
That you can share with
so
us.
many,
legally able
Legally
to
share with us.
Yeah,
you have the permission legally to share with us. Like you can't
it's
mention anybody's name or anything like that.
No, I mean, it's too general, because honestly, what you have to do to have the sustainability in anything is find the enjoyment, and find like the glee, and find like the reasons to keep going in
Yeah.
honestly so many minuscule things, so
I mean,
in a
you're
way, it's like,
yeah.
I don't think there's any overvalued moments, because I really highly value a lot of moments, a lot of people that I work with. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't necessarily say like making coffee for like Tim Wendobo, you know what I mean? Like, was awesome. It was, but then like he hated it. You know what I mean? So it's like, who cares? It's like, I don't roast coffee so that Tim Wendobo like loves it when I serve it to him in like a 12-ounce latte bowl in the middle of like park in Chicago. I care about the people that like literally walk in there every single day and like love it. So it's just
We'll have
like,
to get him on the show and ask him like why he didn't like that specific latte. Maybe
just,
we've all got those stories,
about, right? It was probably terrible. It's espresso. Like,
yeah,
it's great. And it's terrible at the same time. So,
well, hey, I'd love to just thank you, like again, everybody for joining us on Coffee Tech Talk Tuesday. We are we're done. This is it. That's our hour.
Christopher, thank you so much.
I'll be coming to Kansas City, I think maybe this weekend or next. So hopefully I'll be able to swing by and knock on the door, and maybe someone will be there, or I'll text you.
Wear a mask. Yeah, call me,
Marty. Of course. Yeah, we'll be outside drinking coffee.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Great.
All right. Well, again, my name is John Ferguson, Coffee Tech Talk host. Marty
Rowe, workbenchcoffeelabs.com.
And Chris, take it away. Christopher.
Yeah, Christopher Oppenhuis, Marcell Coffee, marcellcoffee.com, Kansas City, Missouri, USA, forever.
Oh, and hey, everybody, don't forget to push that subscribe button and like and comment and do all that great stuff. We've got 2 more subscribers this week. We are really pushing hard to get up to, are we almost up to 300? We're getting there. One subscriber, you are all very important to me. I love you all, everybody out there. Subscribe.
Absolutely.
Good night. Love y'all.
Bye-bye.